Today's webinar is Empowering Through Culture, Insights from Joel Jamieson on Community Inclusion. But before we get started, first of all, I'd like to say hello, Segon in Mohawk, which is my family's language. And I would like to welcome Brittany Bryan, who's going to be offering the land acknowledgement. So over to you, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Angela, and good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm very honored to be able to do the land acknowledgement again today, and give my personal commitment to highlight and acknowledge the experiences of Indigenous peoples of this land, past, present, and future. We acknowledge we are here gathering today, no matter where we are, on the traditional territory of Indigenous people. I want to acknowledge the long-standing contributions of Indigenous people to what is now known as Ontario. And I want to acknowledge the history of treaty making and note that hundreds of years after they were signed, the treaties between Indigenous people and first settlers remain relevant today. We also acknowledge that we are all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrant either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Today, we pay tribute to the ancestors of those of African and Indigenous origin and descent. In Toronto, we acknowledge that this is the ancestral land of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and then Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now considered home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Last year, I had the opportunity to bring forth the land acknowledgement for the first time, and I made the public commitment to learn, to have the difficult conversations, and to ask important questions, to open up in the face of my own ignorance. Since making this commitment, I've had the pleasure to attend a variety of Indigenous-led conversations and spaces, expanding my awareness. Although experiences were presented in a variety of styles and topics, there has been a common theme that I would like to highlight today. This theme is the intentional and strategic erasure of the Indigenous identity. As we know, the goal of colonization was to erase the existence of different cultures until only that of the European culture stood. This was done through slavery, invasions, and as we all know, residential schools. Systemically, stringent stipulations and Eurocentric definitions were placed on the Indigenous identity to force conformity and ultimately oppress. This led many to squelch their identity to simply survive. Today, this very same issue puts many of our Indigenous brothers and sisters in a position to prove themselves and over-explain their identity, all in the name of being accepted. As we continue to strive to be true allies, I encourage each and every one of us to speak less and to listen more. Ask the questions out of curiosity and not out of judgment. Be willing to be uncomfortable and to sit in our own ignorance. Place ourselves in spaces where learning happens. And this is the only way we can truly be allies. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I have to get myself together a little bit. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. And as somebody who's been alongside your journey, I think for the last year, it's been a pleasure to watch you grow and learn. And for whatever part I've had the opportunity to play in that, thank you. It's been really wonderful. So again, thank you. And to each and every one of you, when you have an opportunity to give a land acknowledgement, it really is an honor and a privilege and an obligation to learn about where you live, where are you actually acknowledging, and what does it truly mean to give a land acknowledgement, and what treaties you're involved with, and what your commitment is going forward. So again, thank you so much, Brittany. It means a lot. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Joel Jamieson. Joel is a Haudenosaunee from Oneida of the Thames, has over 35 years of experience with community living agencies, including 22 years with our own Community Living Toronto, and leadership roles at Community Living North Halton, and now with Community Living Six Nations. Joel is going to share some examples of how connecting with culture has been so important for those on the Six Nations Reserve. He will also share personal stories, including the profound influence of his sister Gwen, who has Down syndrome. Joel's love for his sister and what she has taught him shines through his commitment to supporting people with disabilities. So without further ado, over to you, Joel. Welcome.
Thank you, Angela. How's my sound? Sounding okay? All right. Yeah, so Angela asked me a couple of weeks ago if I was interested in speaking at Community Living Toronto's Indigenous Month, and I said, yeah, sure, that sounds great. And as it got closer and closer, she was letting me know, oh, there's over 100 people coming, and I was like, what the heck is happening? I thought I was going to be speaking to maybe 10 or 12. So overwhelmed, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to come and speak to me. I would like to thank Brittany for the land acknowledgement. Just probably seven years ago, I went to a conference for my boss here at Six Nations, and it was a ministry was doing some information session, and there was directors there, and I was so excited, like I'm going to get to go. And I can't remember if it was the Deputy Minister of Finance or Deputy Minister of Ministry of Community and Social Services, but he did the first land acknowledgement. And I was like, wow, this I love this. Where'd this guy come from? And I didn't even know at that time that land acknowledgements were going to be happening. So for me, I was kind of in shock. And in a room with probably 30 directors and managers who are not Indigenous. And I felt like, oh my God, is he speaking to me? So I was just like, wow, this is something. But my whole plan for going from my boss was, at the time, Community Living Six Nations was, like, I know all social services, community livings are underpaid, but Community Living Six Nations was very underpaid. So I thought, well, if I go there and this Ministry of Finance guy's there, I'm going to talk to him because that's what I do. And after his land acknowledgement, I was like, wow, I got him now. Like, I'm going to let him know that that's the first time I've heard a land acknowledgement. It was so awesome. And then let him know about our pay problems. So that was my introduction to land acknowledgements, and Community Living Six Nations, not all on my hard work, did get a pay increase. So that's was very exciting. So what I want to talk about next is just about Oneida of the Thames. I'm from Oneida of the Thames. My father is full status from Oneida of the Thames. My mother is very, very English, white, Irish woman who was a school teacher on the reserve there. And when she graduated, she wanted to go to a reserve. She wanted to teach, and she wanted to teach on a reserve. So she fell in love with my dad, had some children, my sister who has Down syndrome. And probably back in the 60s, early 60s, for a white woman living or working on the reserve, very challenging, very, very difficult times. It's not like Six Nations Reserve here. We got Tim Hortons, 16 gas stations and 4 restaurants. Probably in the 60s, we might have had a corner store type of thing, and the council. So very challenging for my mom, I believe, during that time, and went back to London. She moved back to Toronto, where she was born and raised. And my grandmother was from residential school. My dad went to Indian school, which Indian school is kind of the upgraded version of residential school. Indian school was residential school, except you didn't leave your home. It was on the reserve. So kind of that thing, but the same kind of philosophies of the government was being taught during Indian school. So during that time when, you know, your children leave, or my mother was leaving and taking my dad's kids, he wouldn't follow them. that was built into his education, and he thought, well, they'll come back, you know. So that was kind of the beginning for me of when I talk about residential school. I don't know residential school. I wasn't part of residential school. I wasn't part of Indian school. I was raised in Toronto. And so that piece for my father turned in from was 2 years I didn't see my dad, 4 years, 8 years, 20 years you don't see your father. And then eventually you see him and he was, hi, how are you? You know, because it was like we came back. So it's a very strange situation where my brother was didn't take it very well and was like, you know, I don't want anything to do with my dad. Where I understood the whole process of it somehow. I don't know where I figured that out, but anyway, I was okay with it. So we moved back to Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, helped raise my sister, and the whole thing was I was in grade 4 and I was doing support work with my sister because my mom was at school. My mom was teaching. So in grade 4, I was a support worker. I was making craft dinner. I was helping her learn how to wash her clothes, how to make basic stuff, toast. You know, I was in grade 4 making toast with peanut butter and jam and things like that. I was pretty proud of myself, you know. So those kind of things were happening, and when I graduated, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't really know what I wanted to do. And somebody said, you can work with adults with developmental challenges. And I applied for Humber College. I got in, and this will go back a little bit. Maybe Dave Scott might know about these things, but when I first applied, the first year I was registered for mental retardation counselor. So it was MRC. That was the course that I applied for. And somehow during the summer, it switched over to developmental service worker. So the year that I graduated was the first year that there was developmental service worker. So I don't get credit for that, but you know, I take it. So that's how far I go back. During my time at Humber College, I was working for Community Living Toronto. I probably wasn't supposed to because I didn't have any credentials yet, but I was doing overnights. I was doing relief work. I was working weekends. And when I finally graduated, I got a full-time overnight with a group home, Logan. It wasn't even Logan. I can't even remember. Leslie group home. And I was there for about 6 months, and overnight's pretty challenging. A coworker of mine said she's applying for ARC Industries and I should go for that. And I got a job there with ARC Industries and was there for about 6 years. And then moved to employment supports, where I spent, apparently my math isn't very good, but I think I worked for employment supports for about 15 years. And so altogether, I was there about 22, 23 years in Toronto. Eventually, I actually was working with a gentleman by the name of Greg Edmonston, and he was the sales manager for ARC Industries. He was also the manager for employment support, and he got a director's job with North Halton, Community Living North Halton. And a manager's job came up there, and I don't know if I called him or he called me, but he said, you got to come check this out. It's small. We're a smaller organization, and I think you'd fit in here. And I got the job. I stayed with Greg for 8 years. I managed Horizons Packaging, Milton and Georgetown. I managed the employment supports program for Milton and Georgetown. And I don't think I would have actually left there. I was happy there. Of course, you always love the individuals in service, so that wasn't a problem. I think what happened was my culture got me, and I would attend powwows. I didn't know how to dance. I didn't know how to sing. I did drum a little bit, but I wasn't a a native drummer, but we'd go to the powwows. And one day I was at this New Credit powwow, which is right beside Six Nations, and there was a community living Six Nations booth there. And my wife pointed at it and she goes, "Hey, buddy, that's you." And I was like, wow, that's community living. I have all these years experience, including I've been a manager 8 years, and it's on Six Nations. This has to be my calling. So I went to speak to the ladies at the booth. They had no idea what to do with me. They were like, "Oh my goodness, I mean, we probably could hire this guy in some way, but he's just they weren't ready for me." So I waited a few months, and I got a tour of Community Living Six Nations with the acting director. They had an acting director, and my current, our director here is called the executive lead, and she had just started. So there was a sort of a crossover there between the executive lead and the acting executive director. And I had lunch with them, and they gave me a tour. And I think they were thinking, yeah, we gotta hire this guy. He has status, that's a bonus. All these things were looking like I should be working here. So something came up. We got some funding, and it slipped my mind now what it was called, but it was a 2-year program for employment supports, and they wanted me to manage it. And it wasn't HRSDC, it was something else. And it was for 2 years, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, can I take a leave? Greg wasn't going to give me a leave for 2 years. And it was sort of the whole, that situation was, I can't really jeopardize the whole situation for 2 years. They said, we're going to keep you. So I said, okay, well I'm going to leave. So I picked up the whole family. I picked up my kids. One of my son was going to grade 9 in high school. My daughter was going in grade 7 in junior high. Worst time of their life to move away and go to Port Dover, population 7,000. We were living in Burlington. The population 7,000 was our street. So I was not a very good dad at that time, but I figured this was going to be the best plan for our future. With mortgages, we were moving away from the crazy mortgages and could pay off our house out here. So I thought, you know what, we're just going to have to do it. I bit the bullet, and I started working for Community Living Six Nations, and I've been here for 8 years. So that's sort of how I got here. I want to tell you a bit about Six Nations because it's incredible. Unless something outstanding happens, I'm pretty sure I will retire here. I have a few years to go, and I plan on staying. But it's a small association. We did not recreate the wheel. Community living. We have at Six Nations, we have a group home. We have one group home. So can you imagine one group home? We have a supportive independent living program, which right now has 4 individuals living in their own apartments. We have 5 individual houses at the back where 4 people are actually living, and we have a community member who's been living there for such a long time. He'll stay till he's not there anymore, and then we will create an opening. I don't know how we did that, but that's what we've done, and we're not kicking him out. So we continue to have a day program. I know that's something that the ministry is looking at, closing some day programs down, but because of the kind of work that we're doing, we are teaching individuals our language again. We're teaching the language, we're teaching the culture, even to have community members come in and sing and drum and sing songs. They're learning their language through the music. They're learning art crafts. And I don't think that is going to go away. for a while. So even though if the ministry wants those things to close down, what we're doing here is actually catching up our people to where you guys are now, things where you are now. We're trying to learn our language. Crazy. So we are here Monday to Friday at the day program. There's so many of you there. Anytime you're able to get a hold of me and you want to come out this way, we're doing outstanding stuff. And if I was to walk in the other room, I don't know if my internet would allow me to move. I'm sure there's singing out there. There's somebody who's singing. Just the mid-May, the director of Haldeman, Community Living Haldeman, asked us if we would come and help plant trees. And we were like, okay, sounds interesting. And then he mentioned, do you have anybody that can do an opening? And I think maybe it was like a land acknowledgement. And we didn't want to do it. We wanted something else. So we have a gentleman here who's in service and he sings. He drums, he sings songs. And I told this gentleman, Bob Patella, that we're gonna sing. And he was like, okay, let's sing. So we went there and this gentleman was practicing his songs. He was practicing, we were trying to come with like a growth song, a growing of plants, and we couldn't come anything like that. And the best we could come up with the translation was a rabbit dance. So I don't know how it worked, but our gentleman came, he played a water drum, which is a Haudenosaunee kind of drum. It's got water in it. And most of the drums that you see, at the hockey games where they're beating the drums and when they're at the powwows, it's this drum has water in it, makes a different kind of sound. And he brought his water drum. He sang actually 2 songs, and huge day for him. He loved it. Those things go on our website. Those things we currently are using Facebook, Community Living Six Nations Facebook. And if you go on there, you can see some of the things that happen and that are connected to culture. But for, just 20, 30 years ago, they weren't speaking language. They weren't you weren't allowed to do those things. You weren't allowed to sing in public. And now we have somebody from our agency with a developmental challenge singing at another agency. I don't want to say a white agency, a non-native agency, singing an opening song about planting trees. Pretty outstanding. So those are some of the things we're doing.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I usually, like I said I talked to Angela before I got on, I don't usually love a script. I usually just I go from my heart. I go from what we're doing, and I think of stuff that's happening here. I'm open to any questions about our agency, about, how I got to where I am now. Probably, I can't really see who's all here, but I know there are some people who are listening today that when I worked in Toronto probably didn't even know I was Native. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. I always had the longest hair, but so for me to actually get a job here it's an amazing story, and it truly did happen just from me trying to research my culture and finding them.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I wrote in the chat, Joel, that to everybody, and I emphasize it whenever I talk to folks, is go to a powwow. If you're curious and you just don't know and you want to find more information about Indigenous culture, just go and have fun at a powwow. It's a great place to start, great place to support Indigenous artists who will have various booths there selling their handiworks, and a great place to just ask people questions about their regalia, about their dances, and you have all different ages and stages and abilities that go to the powwows, which are just just so incredible. And if you learn what all the different competitive dances are about, you'll get to see that too, because there's the one where it's the older elders that are coming out and dancing, and then you'll have ones where it's very elaborate regalia, and then you have the young children and the women, and it's just absolutely incredible. You talked a lot about how you weave culture into different day-to-day activities, and the thing that struck me was last year we were at the Community Living Ontario conference, and we ended up being there on Orange Shirt Day. And I came out wearing my orange shirt that Community Living Toronto had worked with an artist to create. And Joel came out with his orange shirt that the individuals at your program had actually worked together to create. And you had a message on the back in your language.
Yeah, so there wasn't really a translation. That's sometimes often how things work. And you kind of put me on the spot because I forgot.
No, I'm sorry.
So the translation, like, every child matters. And that's didn't really translate for us. So it was more of the caring of all our children.
Wonderful.
So it's kind of different than that, but it did say it. I think the shirt that I gave you, we did them in all of the 6 nations.
Yes.
And mine was in Oneida. So that was special to all of us.
Yeah. And then Joel and I proceeded to run off into other rooms, and then we exchanged t-shirts. So then I wore Joel's shirt for the day and he wore my shirt for the day. So it's hopefully it's going to be a bit of a tradition for us to exchange our orange shirts and get to know all the different groups that are commemorating that day. It was really a lot of fun. Yeah. How important is weaving different cultural elements into the day-to-day activities for the people that you support?
It's every day. It's everything that we do. We do other activities. We swim, we do bowling, we do other things, but our primary goal is to have 2 community members come to our program to sing, to maybe bring artifacts, to talk about kastoas, which are like the war bonnets. It's not the right word, but it's almost reverse segregation. Like we're not. We want to go in the community. We want to be out and do as much as possible. We want to swim. We want to golf. We want to do all those things. But we want the community come into us. So rather than us go into the community, we're getting community members to come to our program. We're sort of that doesn't always happen with different community livings. It's like there's community livings over there. They do stuff. They're supporting and offering opportunities for people. We're bringing our community in, and they're teaching us things because they're the ones that have the knowledge. I don't know how to speak Oneida. I know I can probably get 4 or 5 words there, thank you and you're welcome, things like that. But the community still has the language. They still have everything. So that's what we're trying to do. And the financial part of it is we want them to come. We want them to come. So if somebody's going to come and we have people who hoop dance, we have people who just do paintings and or just basic native care with natural oils and things from the community, making salves. If they're going to come in, we're going to pay you. Like we want you here, and that way they're going to come back again. Like it's not a one-time shot. This is an ongoing thing. You don't learn your language. You don't learn songs in a day. If you want to come back every week, we want you to come. We want you to be here.
Wonderful. So, and it is it's very traditional in Indigenous culture to invite fire keepers or elders or knowledge keepers into your space. And as you said, Joel, offering a gift, offering payment. One of the things that Joel and I talked about before this session was whether or not I would offer Joel tobacco. And a very traditional thing in Indigenous culture is that when you ask somebody, especially somebody in a leadership role, you would offer tobacco, and that's a contract binding them to carry out what what we've agreed upon, what we've discussed. And when Joel and I had that conversation, I don't know if it's because he wanted to fly by the seat of his pants, and so he didn't want a binding contract. But anyways, we had that conversation, and Joel said, no, we're friends, we're amongst friends, and we're not really entering into a contract. This is really just a conversation. So that's kind of the difference that you would have seen with this session from some of the previous sessions where I have offered tobacco and have legally bound not legally, but have that's called colonial words, but I have actually entered into what we would believe to be a Haudenosaunee contract with somebody when they accept
like a
that
social agreement. Yeah,
exactly. So with Indigenous Peoples Day, which is this Friday, is there anything that your group will be doing or participating in?
well,
Did I put you on the
amazingly,
spot again?
no, it's actually exciting, as somebody who's worked with community living 38 years, it's nice to have a day off, right? So for our agency, we get this day off. It's now a new stat day, and people are going to continue to do.
Nope, you're still there. You're there.
People are going to continue to do what they're doing because, I mean, on the reserve, we're doing what we're doing, and it's just a day off. For me, I was going to mention I don't live on Six Nations. It's something I was going to talk about, like even connected to the DSO. So often I sit on a branch managers committee where they bring up individuals who are coming up in the system who are 18 and where they're going to go, and often they will say and is indigenous. And for me, I'm just like, well, that's okay. And I think they feel, well, the person's indigenous, Joel's going to step forward and help them out. It's not it's not in our criteria for us to do that. It's there's First Nations, and I've talked about this at conferences and to other people just about First Nations, Six Nations, and the town of Six Nations are three different things. So First Nations in Canada, First Nations in the United States, First Nations are anybody who are indigenous, Inuit, Cherokee, Oneida, Haudenosaunee. All those different nations are First Nations. If they live in Canada, they're on reserve in Canada, they're considered First Nations. Six Nations is a group of Six Nations that got together, and they've joined as one, which was called the Iroquois, and recently has changed to the Haudenosaunee. And the Haudenosaunee are like I said, are six different nations. And where I am working is called Six Nations. So that's actually the territory. It's easier to say the town of Six Nations is where I am. And so if somebody from the D is going forward to the DSO and they're Chippewa, they're not First Nation, they're First Nations, they're not Six Nations. And if it was somebody from Oneida, the Thames, they are Six Nations because that's one of the Six Nations, but they're not from Six Nations, the town, and that's the criteria of us. So the Ohsweken, the town of Six Nations is huge. It's one of the largest reserve, if not the largest reserves in Ontario. And it's possibly 12,000 individuals on and off the reserve. So for community living Six Nations to start an agency, you kind of have to have some numbers. Oneida maybe has 10 people with developmental challenges, and they probably are not coming forward to say that they are. So we don't know the total numbers. So for Oneida to say we're going to start a community living, it's probably not going to be that successful because of just how many people will be in service. For community living Six Nations, currently we have probably about 34 people on our list. We have people coming through the DSO who are coming up. Autism numbers are always huge, and we haven't even thought about that. So for us, we're not too concerned about those things, but other other nations are coming to us. Thunder Bay, other reserves are coming, chiefs are coming to us, and how did you guys get this going? And we spend a day with them. They talk money with my executive director, and how did that all happen and things like that. And so far, we're the only community living on a reserve in Ontario.
That's absolutely amazing. And when you mentioned the Six Nations, and so oftentimes when I do these sessions, I'm in my office at 20 Spadina, and in the background, I actually have the Haudenosaunee flag, the purple flag with the cubes, which indicate the six organizations or the six nations that are part of the Six Nations, right? And mine is Mohawk, and I am the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte and the Tainanega Nation, and we are the leftmost square or the keepers of the eastern doors. So Joel and I are part of that same group, but I've often said before about the term indigenous and how it has that homogenous swipe that sounds like it's one group of people, and it isn't. It's a very big, complicated group of Inuit, Métis, all of the First Nations folks. It's very different. And we hosted one of our sessions recently at the Native Center on 20 just south of 20 Spadina. I think it's 18 is their address, or 16, one of them. And they have a very large totem pole out front of the building. And when I did a tour there, and it was an Inuit woman who did the tour, and she said all the things that she can't relate to. And she said, totem poles, I have nothing to do with them. I don't really understand them. And they're not even part of Ontario. They're a West Coast thing. And she talked about the medicine wheel and how it's so pervasive in every image that's out there now. She goes, we don't have a medicine wheel in Inuit culture. And so it was really a nice reminder for everybody that was part of that tour as well. There are just really huge differences in getting to know the different groups. Yeah, and amazing to you folks that community living is on a reserve, because it is a real, it's a real conflict with the colonial construct of a government-run agency being, or transfer payment agency being embraced, and a real testament to the people that are working there to permeate the culture into the work that you do.
Yeah, something that's not mine. We have one of the other managers that work here, Dana Longboat, and the Haudenosaunee people. People think of teepees and things like that. The Haudenosaunees were in longhouses. And when we talk about the government trying to stop different programs, stop our day programs, stop this, we can't have. If you come to Community Living Six Nations, we're right together. We're all together. The apartments at the front, the houses are at the back. There's a group home in the corner, and the head office is in the front. So when people think of this, especially other agencies who have been, shutting down programs and things like that, they're thinking, how can they do that? And Dana's idea is, in a longhouse, 5 or 6 families would live together in a longhouse. So we're living together. We do things together, all our programs together. Everything that needs to be done is done together. And one thing that's mine is the Three Sisters soup, if I can find it. I kind of came up with this idea just because of our cultural activities that we did. We planted some plants, and we did the Three Sisters, which is the corn, the beans, and the squash. So when you plant those plants together, each one has a purpose to help the other one grow. So the corn helps create opportunity for the beans to grow up. The bean leaves help to cover the squash from the bugs. The bugs like to eat the squash. So there's different things that the 3 plants do together to help them grow together. And when I think of the Three Sisters, for us, we make a soup. The soup is a Three Sisters soup. It's all 3 items together, cooked together, and that is a Haudenosaunee traditional soup. But for here, I think of it as all our different programs. We have the group home, we have the day program, we have the SIL program, and we work very close together. And often we don't have a staff you know, somebody calls in, we didn't fill the shift for Sil. We're all together here. We're together. We're gonna look after the other areas. There'll be nobody that's not looked after. And if there's nobody on Sil, there's somebody at 24 hours a day at group home. They can go walk over, make sure everything's okay. The Sil people can come to the group home. It's very, very closely linked. And you know, all these things over the years, I've looked at the shutting down of institutions, the closing of the sheltered workshops. All those things happened for a reason. And, you know, some of them had good things. The sheltered workshops created a place for individuals. That was their job. It wasn't about their financial you know, they weren't making minimum wage. We know that, but they were working. They had their friends. They were sitting with Josephine. There was Mike. We're going to have lunch together, and that was their thing. Employment supports created jobs for people. But in most cases, those individuals were working independently from all their other friends. So they have a job at lunchtime. Hopefully somebody's going to sit with them. Hopefully somebody's going to talk to them about what they did on the weekend. But in most cases, it was creating segregation in an integrated environment. So the workshops did have some qualities that were
For sure.
helpful.
Yeah, we were talking about that at the start of the call, where we talked about how, you know, there's things in our past that we're leaving in our past, but there were a number of things that were part of the continuum, that we wouldn't be where we are today with job opportunities for individuals in the community and more true inclusion, as you're talking about, if those sheltered workshops didn't exist the first time. And, you know, and moving along and taking the good from those and trying to translate them into all these other areas. And that sense of community that you talk about, I think, is outside of the Indigenous community, is something that we can really learn from. How do you create that true sense of community? The circle, you know, the circle is so important in our cultures around making everybody feel a part of the circle, and how you enter and exit the circle, and the meaning of a circle around people's lives and their support and their community.
Yes, yeah. Well, a benefit for me not having a structure in my presentation is I can kind of go where I want, but I did kind of miss out on my sister a little bit.
Oh,
and
Gwen, yes.
I do want to touch on it because it's directed me from a very young boy to how I take care of individuals in service now. So it's everything I do, everything I've ever done was based on how is my sister gonna, would my sister like to be in this group home? Would my sister like to be in this program? Would my sister like to do this job at Metro Hall? So before I would place somebody, that would kind of be like my go-to thing. So she's always been there. And recently my mother passed away. So my brother and I are now caregivers, is the word, I guess, for her. And we switch month to month. And every month she's with me and my wife, and then she goes with my brother. And it's been a year, so I've had her 6 different months, and it's been great and it's been challenging. And you know, some of the things is I've kind of lost my sister. Now she's kind of like I'm a caregiver again. So that's something that we're working on. We're trying to take a look into some respite opportunities with community living Halton, Norfolk, see if we can do something like that. That would help out a lot. But again, she's somebody who was at Jesse Manson for 20 years, you know, so she was in that system, and that was her work. You know, she came home from work and she was proud of it, and she was proud of what she was doing there. She moved to Brampton, and Brampton had oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of their packaging company, but it was another packaging company, and she was there another 20 years. So 40 years of my sister's life has been with packaging organizations, with community livings. And if I asked her today if she wanted to go back, she would go. She would.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And we hear that from a number of folks where it's their sense of purpose and a group that they were there for so long that it's like a number of our own parents or grandparents who worked in, they often grew up and got a job and they stayed in the same place for a very long period of time, and you grew relationships, you get to know families. And there's definitely some mourning when you leave that behind and you look back nostalgically, for sure. And I'm sure for Gwen, it was an incredible, difference from being in a traditional school and going there and having much more independence and opportunity to do great things. We do have an interesting question in the chat, and I'm going to try to summarize it a little bit. Somebody's asking a question about DSO eligibility. And do you find that people that are through Six Nations or anybody who's Indigenous are falling through the cracks in terms of diagnosis and getting the supports they need through the DSO?
What we have done is brought the DSO to us. So the individual comes one day a week. It's actually not one day a week anymore. She's gone, I think it's twice a week. I'm totally mixing that up. It's every other week.
That's okay.
And so they're on site. So they're going to be doing, the lady does her own work. She has papers that she has to do with the DSO, but she's here. So if families want to get in contact with her, they call us. You need to come on Wednesday. She's here. Great. So we've made that available. It's something that's opened the door to people. The other thing is, I mean, we're a large reserve, large population, but the community is very tight. The community knows what we do here. The people know that the service that we're providing, and you have good days and you have bad days like anything else. Mostly I want our staff, I want to have a good day. I want to create good days, and I want individuals to want to come here. So that's kind of out in the community already, just because we're not Toronto. We're so small that people hear about what we're doing and they want to come. They see us in the community that we're doing good things, and they also know that their uncle was here last week singing.
Yes.
And so it's they're open to it. The other part of it is they are generally, our individuals, our community are fearful of government. They've been messed over by the government for many years, hundreds of years. And just something as good as passports has taken so long for our people to sign up. They don't want to sign up because they have to give documentation to the government. Oh, do you have your status card? Why do I need my status card? Why do I need my OHIP card if I'm going to get funding for passports? So some of these things don't make sense, but it's the process. So it took us a long time. We did the same thing. We brought the passport, I'm not sure what their title is, whoever takes the applications to come here in the evening, and we had raffles. We had, if you come, you could win an iPad. So if you came, the families would come listen to their presentation, and it was like, oh, they could go to the Argo game. They could go to the hockey game. It's all covered. Family doesn't have to take them. You're going to get a support worker to help you. And this is going to be incredible. So 1 signed on, 2 signed on, so many signed on. Eventually, I don't even know how many we have anymore, but
that's great. Well, and in true Indigenous culture tradition, it's word of mouth. So once one person does it successfully, they're going to tell 2 people who tell 2 people who tell 2 people, and it's always got to be proof. But yeah, very challenging with a number of different services for folks, that it's that concept of feeling like you have to be counted. and
Right.
you're being watched, and you're being counted, and you're being documented, and knowing that it does come from a place of a tremendous amount of hurt, even if it isn't for that individual, their parents or their grandparents or their great grandparents, and knowing that somewhere in their family somebody believed and somebody went along with it, and it didn't end well. And so
I
it's
hope that
very,
answers. I hope it answers the question, but again, I have the same thing when I'm in that brand managers meeting and I hear indigenous background.
yes,
I'm thinking,
yes,
it's not me, it's not us,
right,
like
yeah,
we can't help, and I feel like they should help. And
yeah,
I feel like we should help. And it's like we can't do that. It's just we can't help all situations, and
yeah.
that's the way it is.
Yeah, and sometimes there's that label that gets attached to us as well. We had another speaker, George Cucci, one day, and he was talking about being a police officer, and they would always introduce him as Indigenous Constable George Cucci, and he asked them to stop, and they kept doing it, and so then he had to go into a situation, and he introduced everybody on the team from their cultural background, and he said Irish
Wow.
Constable and the French
Really?
Canadian Constable, and he did that with the whole group, and they finally went, oh, now we get it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm looking in the chat. Oh, can you ask about the gift shop that they have? So do you have a gift shop at Six Nations? And why have I never
Yes.
shopped there?
Yes. So actually, when I first started, so that was 8 years ago, we did have a gift shop. It was here for maybe 15 years before I was here. When things start out, things are fantastic. Things go great. The whole idea of the store was not to run a gift shop. It was to give our individuals opportunities to work in the gift shop. And we would get items from the community. Community members would bring their crafts and we were selling them. Eventually, it's losing money.
Oh no.
So when the board was talking about, that it was actually their baby, the gift shop's their baby. We want to keep the gift shops. Well, it lost $8,000 last year.
Oh no.
Yeah, but you had 4 people working there. They were making money. It's valuable to us. So we would keep it going another year. We were losing money.
Oh, no.
Eventually we decided we were gonna let it go, and we've rented it out.
Oh, okay.
So this is something I always talk to. Yeah, so when I speak to other reserves about starting an agency, I tell them not to make the minimum. Don't make the minimum things that you can do. Go big. So we had this huge gift shop up the front, for I don't know how many, 2,000 square feet in the main building, 2 other office spaces on the other side that were doing nothing. We rent them out now. It pretty much fundraises for our activities. Every activity we do, we're going bowling, we're going to Crawford Lake. Any items that we want to do, it's there. We've rented it out. We have a building in the back that I think they were using as a woodworking place. They were making chairs and things like that in the back. And eventually we rented it out, and the company that's back there does counseling for mental health and a whole bunch of things like that.
Excellent.
And they pay us as well. They clean the whole place up. They put a new floor, they put a new roof.
Perfect.
So they fixed it up. So
Give us
we've
their
rented
card.
that out as well. So we're just renting everything out. And I think other agencies are doing. I know Greg was doing that with Community Living North Halton, where they bought that whole building and rented it out to the karate studio, to the Ministry of Transportation. They might have been making a fortune there. And eventually it paid off the whole building. And I think they're taking it back now. So we need it for this, we need it for that. When people were getting out of their leases, instead of renewing or trying to get people in there, we want it back now. It's paid for. So
Wow.
great plan.
Yeah, well, congratulations on trying new things. I'm sad I can't come and shop there, but
Yeah.
I will say we do have a marketplace at 20 Spadina as part of our social brew coffee shop. And if any of the folks in your area are have any items that they'd love to make available for sale in our marketplace, we'd be honored to
Wow.
have some items there. And definitely we'll be planning a visit to come see you folks. And you're always
Yes,
welcome at
yeah.
any of the Community Living Toronto programs, as I think you know, as well as the camp, which I
Right,
know has
yes.
a soft spot in your heart too. I
Yes,
don't
so
see any other questions,
yeah,
unless you have anything else to wrap up with there, Joel.
no, I have been, there's been a lot of comments in the bottom, which I read, but I can't really acknowledge because my brain won't allow me to think about two things. But I did see a lot of comments, and I appreciate the words that you have spoken to me. And it was great to see some people. I actually can't see them on this, but Muhammad was there, David Scott, I could see David was there, and I appreciate these people coming. I've known them for 20, 30 years, and you know, to come in here and see what I'm doing makes me feel good. So as well as everybody else that's there that has have shown up to hear me speak. I know Brad has heard me talk before, and so it's just I appreciate everybody coming out and spending an hour with me.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time as well, and a little bit of a welcome home to visit
Yes.
Community Living Toronto and some of your folks, and hopefully we'll get you to do one of these in person with more of our staff in the very near future. We'd love that, but we will let you get back. So I want to say on behalf of Community Living Toronto, on behalf of the Indigenous Talking Circle here, thank you. And in my language, it is Nawa or Nawagoa. Which is thank you or thank you very much. And I think
Yes.
in this case, it's definitely a Nawagoa. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, and appreciate all of this.
We will. Thanks for having me, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.